In a world of swords and magic, where heroes once stood as defenders of the land, the continent of heroes had been plunged into chaos. The once proud empires had fallen, one after another, under the brutal force of the Demon Queen, Elizabeth. Her strength was unparalleled, her army unstoppable. The demons swept across the land, toppling the empires of the various races, until only the humans remained, clinging desperately to their last strongholds. Yet even the human empire, riddled with internal strife and rebellion, crumbled beneath the weight of its own conflicts. The humans' last defenses shattered, and with them, their hope. Elizabeth, ruthless and cold, stood victorious. Her name became synonymous with terror, her reign unchallenged. She had become the strongest demon queen in history, the sole ruler of the world. Among the humans, however, not all had accepted their fate. The old teacher, Barrow, a man who had once believed in the prophecies of a hero, stood defiant before Elizabeth's throne. His voice, though worn from years of fighting and loss, rang out in the dark hall. "Elizabeth, don't think you've won yet. A hero will rise. Just like in the legends, you'll be defeated completely." Elizabeth's gaze narrowed, unimpressed. One of her advisors sneered at Barrow's outburst. "Teacher Barrow, you misunderstand. Her Majesty isn't asking for your opinion. She's giving you an order." Barrow, filled with rage, spat back, "Order? From a traitor of the human race, a patricide who welcomed the enemy into our midst? I raised you, taught you, believed in you. I thought you were the hero from the prophecy, but I was wrong." Elizabeth's cold smile didn't waver. She stepped closer, her voice like venom. "Since you miss my useless father so much, why don't I reunite you with him?" Just as she raised her hand to deliver the final blow, Barrow's words stopped her. He spoke of a prophecy, a hero destined to rise and wield a holy sword. It was said that the day the hero pulled the sword from the stone, the demon race's reign would end. Elizabeth paused, intrigued. "The legends say a hero will pull this sword? How interesting," she mused. "This queen shall look forward to his arrival." Years passed. Under Elizabeth's reign, the world changed. Her rule, though harsh, brought peace to a once war-torn land. The inequalities and disputes that had divided the races for centuries were abolished. Under her iron fist, peace was maintained, and the continent of heroes flourished. The Demon Queen had succeeded where no other ruler had, uniting the races under one banner, albeit through fear and power. But not everyone was content with this new world order. A secretive anti-hero alliance emerged, determined to prevent the arrival of the prophesied hero. They feared that his coming would disrupt the fragile peace that Elizabeth had forced upon the world. Within the heart of her empire, Elizabeth's chancellors whispered of the prophecy. The elves had searched every corner of their forests, the dwarves scoured their forges, but no trace of the hero had been found. Some believed that even if the hero appeared, he would stand no chance against the Demon Queen's overwhelming might. Yet Elizabeth wasn't afraid. She had long been preparing for the hero's arrival. In secret, she gathered ancient tomes on magic and warfare, studying them obsessively. Though she could easily crush the continent with her power, something within her craved the challenge. The idea of a hero rising against her stirred something deep inside her, a desire for a worthy opponent. But for now, the hero remained elusive, and Elizabeth's reign stretched on, unchallenged, into its 15th year. In the cities under her rule, life continued as if the prophecy had never been spoken. Shops bustled with activity, people traded goods, and children played in the streets. Peter, a merchant in the market, hurried to an audition, hoping to land the role of a male lead in the local theater. The mundane details of life went on, untouched by the undercurrents of fear and hope that swirled beneath the surface. But in the shadows, voices still whispered. The prophesied hero would come. The sword would be pulled from the stone. And when that day arrived, the Demon Queen's reign would be tested. For now, Elizabeth waited, confident, powerful, unchallenged. But somewhere out there, in the vastness of Heroes' continent, The first steps of a journey were being taken. The hero, whoever they were, was coming. And Elizabeth, though ruling with an iron fist, was ready to face whatever destiny had in store. The Demon King roared with frustration, his voice echoing through the dark hall like a thunderclap. A bunch of trash. His crimson eyes glowed with fury as he paced across the stone floor, his cape billowing behind him like a storm cloud. He was the ruler of the world, the most powerful being to walk the lands of the hero's continent. He had studied all the ancient magical texts, endured countless hardships, and even created the ultimate spell, the Doomsday Magic, in anticipation of the legendary Hero's Challenge. But the hero, this elusive figure prophesied to rise against him, was nowhere to be found. I've reached the peak of the world, holding its power in my hands, waiting for the hero to come and challenge me. The Demon King bellowed, his voice trembling with the frustration of waiting. And yet, where are you? His impatience was palpable. For years, he had prepared for this battle, not to crush the hero, but to stand as his greatest opponent. In his twisted mind, the ultimate purpose of his power was to serve as a stepping stone for the hero's rise to fame. But that hero remained hidden, refusing to face him. The thought gnawed at him like a festering wound. "Your Majesty, you don't mean to," one of his advisors started, but the Demon King cut him off with a wave of his hand. "Then I'll come to you," he declared, eyes blazing with determination. His grip tightened on his sword, and a wicked grin spread across his face. "If you won't come to challenge me, I'll pull the holy sword myself." Gasps echoed through the room. "No way. The Demon King is really going to pull the holy sword?" Someone whispered, the disbelief heavy in their voice. The Demon King's grin widened. "Who said only the legendary hero can pull it out?" Meanwhile, far away in a place untouched by the chaos of the world, life unfolded at a much slower pace. In a peaceful village, nestled among rolling hills and fertile farmlands, a man named Lu Ping lived a life far removed from kings, queens, and demon lords. He had once been an ordinary office worker, someone who never sought adventure or excitement. In his past life, Lu Ping found solace in short videos and mundane pleasures. Farming, he soon discovered, brought him a tranquility that his old life had never offered. "My name is Lu Ping," he would say with a content sigh, as he tended to his crops. "I was just an ordinary guy in my previous life, and that's all I want to be now." The simple pleasures of sowing seeds, watching them grow, and harvesting the fruits of his labor filled his days. He didn't need the chaos of battles or the thrill of magic. This peaceful life was all he had ever wanted. Under the guidance of the village's newbie system, Lu Ping had learned the basic survival skills needed to thrive in this new world. The system prodded him to leave the village and embark on some grand adventure, but Lu Ping wasn't interested. "Please start your adventure," the system urged, almost pleading with him. "I don't want to kill any Demon King," Lu Ping replied with a sigh, brushing off the system's commands. "Can I just stay here and live quietly?" "No," the system responded, growing more exasperated with each passing day. "Your mission is to defeat the Demon King." But Lu Ping ignored it. He spent his days farming, exchanging his newbie points for better tools, and building his ideal home from scratch. The system's nagging became a distant hum, something he easily tuned out as he focused on his peaceful routine. He liked it here, inside the protective barrier that shielded the village from the outside world. Time moved slower here, giving him all the hours he needed to tend to his crops, and he didn't feel the need to rush into anything. Yet even the system grew frustrated. "How is this a legendary hero at all?" it ranted one day. "You farm and farm, ignoring my suggestions. You don't want to learn sword skills or magic. I hate it. I hope you die soon at the hands of the Demon King." Lu Ping simply laughed. But then, without warning, the system crashed and disappeared entirely. Silence filled the village. "Nice," Lu Ping said, stretching after a long day. "Finally, some peace." As he prepared his dinner, a storm rolled in. The wind picked up, and the sky darkened. "Looks like a heavy rain is coming," Lu Ping muttered to himself, rushing to bring his clothes and dried fish inside. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the storm. Lightning cracked the sky, illuminating the man's face, a face twisted in a maniacal grin. "I've found you, the legendary hero," the Demon King growled, standing at the edge of the village, rain soaking his armor. Lu Ping blinked, caught between confusion and disbelief. "Wait, me? The hero?" He looked down at his farming tools, the peaceful life he had built, and sighed deeply. "This can't be happening." Lu Ping breathed a sigh of relief, wiping his brow as he finished securing the last of his dried fish and sausages. The storm was rolling in quickly, but he had made it just in time. "Phew, that was close. Would have been a waste if all this went bad," he muttered to himself, feeling a small sense of victory in his simple task. It was moments like these, the small triumphs of everyday life, that made him appreciate the peaceful existence he had built for himself in the newbie village. Wang Kai, his electronic pet dog, was barking excitedly outside, oblivious to the looming clouds. "Wang Kai, stop it!" Lu Ping called out. "It's about to rain. Get inside." But Wang Kai continued to bark, his mechanical tail wagging furiously. "Hey, Wang Kai, what's that thing in the sky?" Lu Ping squinted, noticing a dark shape descending through the clouds. His heart skipped a beat as a strange feeling washed over him. It wasn't just a storm. Something was wrong. Before he could react, the sky above the village darkened further, and a shadowed figure began to descend, float, towards him. "You're quite dull," a cold female voice said, filled with disdain. "How dare you address me as something?" Lu Ping's eyes widened as he stumbled backward, his mind racing to process what was happening. "I am sorry. I didn't see clearly," he stammered, the feeling of dread growing with every second. Why had someone appeared so suddenly? This was the newbie village, a place that was supposed to be completely safe, protected from the world outside by a time barrier. How could something break through? Wang Kai barked at the sky, but Lu Ping wasn't paying attention anymore. His eyes were fixed on the figure descending from the heavens, her presence commanding, her aura suffocating. In her hand was a sword. Alpha the holy sword, glinting with a power he could hardly comprehend. "Wait, what's going on?" Lu Ping muttered to himself as something strange happened. Without warning, the holy sword flew from her grasp and into his hand, as if recognizing him. The Demon Queen's cold, piercing gaze locked onto him. She descended with a terrifying grace, the ground shaking as her feet touched the earth. "I am Elizabeth, the strongest Demon Queen in history," she declared, her voice brimming with absolute authority. "And today, I shall completely obliterate you." "The Demon Queen?" Lu Ping gasped, his blood running cold. "Why is she here? I've never even left this place." His thoughts raced. The system had always warned him about the eventual meeting between the hero and the Demon Queen. But he wasn't ready. He hadn't even trained. He didn't even want to fight. "Shut up," he hissed at Wang Kai, who continued to bark at Elizabeth, unaware of the danger. "Stupid dog, don't provoke her." But it was too late. The Demon Queen's power was undeniable, her presence too overwhelming to ignore. Lu Ping's hands shook as he gripped the sword. As the system said, the meeting between the hero and the Demon Queen is inevitable, even if I never left the newbie village. His heart sank as the reality of the situation settled in. "There's nothing more to say," he whispered. "I've been a newbie noob this whole time, hiding from everything, but the final boss has come knocking at my door." He stared at the holy sword in his hand, its weight foreign and uncomfortable. "Besides accepting my fate, what else can I do?" For a moment, a strange sense of peace washed over him. "Perhaps I should be content," he thought, his mind drifting to the simple joys of his life. The quiet days spent farming, the satisfaction of building his home, the calm routine he had come to cherish. "I have no regrets. I got to spend such happy times here. In the end, maybe I'll return to zero with this home." But then something strange happened. Elizabeth's eyes met his, and in that instant, something flickered in her gaze. Was it curiosity? A brief smile tugged at the corners of her lips. Wait, what did that smile mean? Lu Ping wondered, confusion cutting through his fear. Before he could make sense of it, Elizabeth raised her hand, her voice filled with venomous rage. Unbelievable. Arrogant bastard. Die. She unleashed a torrent of dark magic, the air crackling with energy as it shot towards him. Come at me with all you've got, Lu Ping whispered, gripping the holy sword tighter, his body trembling. He had no idea how to fight, no training, no skills. But in this moment, facing down the strongest demon queen in history, he accepted his fate. Elizabeth's perspective. The magic swirled around her like a storm as she prepared to strike down the so-called legendary hero. Her mind was clouded with disbelief and fury. This fool, she thought, this bumbling farmer dares to hold the holy sword? To stand before me? The prophecy was absurd. This couldn't be the one destined to defeat her. And yet, she couldn't help but wonder. Why had the sword chosen him? What power could he be hiding? Her anger peaked. Calculation complete. She muttered coldly as the blast of magic surged towards Lu Ping. And in that instant, the battle that should never have happened began. The demon queen, Elizabeth, loomed over Lu Ping, her aura dark and suffocating. She looked down at him with a cruel smile, mocking his very existence. Oh my! As expected of the so-called hero from the legend, she sneered, her voice dripping with contempt. You dare to be so arrogant. It turns out you're relying on an advanced magical tool that's awakened sentience, isn't it? Her laughter echoed through the sky, piercing the quiet of the village. In her eyes, Lu Ping wasn't a challenge. He was just another nuisance, relying on something outside of himself, something weak. But in front of me, everything is inferior, Elizabeth declared, her voice booming with power. She raised her hand, the sky above her swirling with dark energy, and announced her judgment. I've lost interest in probing you any further. Let's end it here. Disappear obediently, along with this land. The force of her apocalyptic magic began to build, crackling in the air like the end of the world itself. Lu Ping, standing in the doorway of his small home, didn't flinch. His heart was pounding, but he had already accepted what was coming. Come at me, he whispered to himself. I'm prepared. Deep down, he had made peace with his fate, even if it meant the destruction of the peaceful life he had so carefully crafted. But then something strange happened. Elizabeth's magic faltered. Her eyes widened in disbelief. My apocalyptic magic has been cracked, she gasped, her voice shaking with shock. She stared at Lu Ping's home, confusion clouding her fierce gaze. What did he do inside the house? Lu Ping, oblivious to what had just occurred, stood there, bracing himself for death. I don't understand, he muttered. What just happened? But he remained still, expecting the inevitable blow to come. Wankai, his loyal electronic pet, barked excitedly, running circles around him as if nothing had changed. The dog seemed blissfully unaware of the gravity of the situation, but Lu Ping couldn't help but feel a strange sense of comfort from the familiar presence of his pet. Unexpectedly, it's me who underestimated. Elizabeth's voice trailed off, her pride clearly wounded. But then her expression hardened. Her arrogance returned in full force. But don't get too conceited, you fool. So far, I've only used less than 30% of my power. The air grew heavy again as the demon queen prepared to unleash her true strength. Her rage flared, and she growled, You impudent scoundrel. Let me show you what real terror is. 1 hour passed. Lu Ping slowly opened his eyes, blinking in confusion. His heart was still pounding, but nothing had happened. The deadly force he had expected never came. Have I already died? He whispered, his voice trembling with uncertainty. His eyes scanned his surroundings, taking in the familiar sight of his home. He was still there, alive. He cautiously peeked outside, expecting the worst. But to his surprise, it was quiet. The storm had passed, and there was no sign of the demon queen. It seems quiet outside, Lu Ping said aloud, though his voice was hesitant. But that demon queen, she wouldn't be waiting for me out there like a maniac, right? His mind raced, trying to piece together what had just happened. Could it really be over? Or was this just a cruel trick? Suddenly, Wankai barked, snapping him back to reality. Lu Ping sighed in relief, the tension draining from his body. "Wankai," he murmured, feeling a wave of gratitude toward his loyal companion. The dog wagged its tail, as if nothing out of the ordinary had happened. But then he noticed something. Wankai, the electronic pet dog he had relied on for so long, seemed different. Lu Ping's eyes fell to the broken remnants of the magical tool embedded in its system. His heart sank. "I'm truly sorry, Wankai," he whispered, guilt tightening his chest. "I completely destroyed the magical tool you were so proud of." Wankai tilted its head, wagging its tail, oblivious to its own brokenness. In the silence that followed, Lu Ping couldn't help but smile weakly. It's okay," he said more to himself than anyone else. "Can't we sit down and talk?" In that moment, Lu Ping realized something profound. For all the chaos, the destruction, and the near-death experiences he had faced, he had come through it with what truly mattered still intact. His simple life, his home, his companion. Those were the things he had fought to protect, even if he hadn't realized it. And somehow, miraculously, he had won. Elizabeth, the demon queen, glared at Lu Ping, her pride bruised, her body aching. "Unbelievable," she muttered through gritted teeth. To be pushed to her limits by this simpleton, this human, was a humiliation beyond measure. "Is this truly the ending that was foretold for me?" Lu Ping stood before her, unsure but determined. He didn't look like a hero, not in the traditional sense. He lacked the fierce battle scars or shining armor. Yet here he was, having subdued the most fearsome being in the realm, not through violence, but with a strange, almost naive determination. "Hey, are you okay?" Lu Ping asked with genuine concern in his voice. Elizabeth, still bound, flinched, recoiling from his unexpected kindness. Her eyes, sharp with suspicion, narrowed. What is he trying to do? She, the demon queen, had suffered a humiliating defeat, yet he hadn't killed her when he had the chance. Instead, he had imprisoned her. But why? Was it to show his power to the world? Her gaze wandered to the strange handcuffs holding her. They weren't ordinary. Another legendary class artifact, it seemed. How much more power did this hero hide? She bit her lip, frustration welling up inside. "Damn it, I underestimated him," she whispered. Lu Ping noticed her stirring. "Oh, you're awake," he said awkwardly, trying to break the tension. His eyes darted to the handcuffs, realizing how imposing the scene must look. "If you want to kill me, don't expect me to beg for mercy," Elizabeth hissed, her voice still full of venom, despite the situation. Lu Ping couldn't help but feel a bit of fear creep in. The demon queen is truly terrifying, he thought, but then his survival instinct kicked in. This was his only chance, and if he didn't play this carefully, he'd be as good as dead. He took a deep breath and decided to talk. "Oh, by the way, those handcuffs? I just used them as a precaution," he explained nervously, scratching the back of his head. "You know how terrifying you are?" He realized his words were coming out wrong. "I mean, you know how formidable you are?" Elizabeth's sharp gaze softened for a brief moment, though her pride wouldn't let her show it. "I believe there's been a misunderstanding between us," Lu Ping continued. His voice wavered slightly, but his eyes were sincere. "I'll unlock the handcuffs now, and we can talk." For the first time, Elizabeth understood his intentions. He wasn't the monster she had expected. He wasn't trying to flaunt his power or humiliate her further. He was trying to resolve this without violence. But that didn't mean she would forgive his arrogance so easily. "Sorry," she said, her voice low but cutting. "From the beginning, you've had a misunderstanding of your own. You thought you were formidable enough to challenge the demon queen?" Her eyes flashed with anger. "Absolutely wrong. If you want to stay alive, you'll fulfill my demands." Lu Ping unlocked the handcuffs slowly, his hands trembling slightly. He had no intention of threatening her, but her words still held a sharp edge. "Well, I've unlocked the handcuffs," he said, stepping back to give her space. "To prove that I really have no ill intentions. So, as promised, let's talk." Elizabeth stared at him, her instincts telling her to strike while he was vulnerable, to tear him apart for the insult of defeating her. But deep down, she knew the current situation wasn't in her favor. She was weakened, and this strange hero had something she didn't yet understand. Strong individuals know when to bend and when to stretch, she thought bitterly. I'll endure you for now, but you'll regret your arrogance later. Hero, Lu Ping exhaled in relief. The tension had diffused, at least for now. Then, take a rest, he said softly, trying not to provoke her further. He could feel the weight of her gaze still on him, but for the moment, she didn't seem intent on killing him. As he sat down, he couldn't help but reflect on what had just happened. He knew everyone must have wondered why he hadn't killed the Demon Queen when she was unconscious. In this world of swords and magic, killing a Demon Queen would have been the logical choice, the expected path for a hero. But Lu Ping wasn't like the others. In his heart, he knew the truth. It's perfectly normal for her, as the Demon Queen, to possess a resurrection skill, he thought. Killing her wouldn't resolve anything. It would only start the cycle over again. He chuckled softly to himself. Killing chickens and fish for soup is one thing, he mused, glancing at Wankai. But I could never kill a person, not even the Demon Queen. He sighed. The conflict between the hero and the Demon Queen didn't have to end in death. Maybe, just maybe, there was another way. If I can show her I pose no threat, Lu Ping thought, his eyes softening. If I can become her friend, maybe I can continue to live happily in this world. Wankai barked playfully, circling around him. The little dog, despite its tattered state, seemed completely unbothered by the day's events. Lu Ping smiled down at his loyal companion. But Wankai, you've become such a mess, he said affectionately, scratching the dog behind its ears. For now, the storm had passed, but the future was uncertain. Lu Ping didn't know what tomorrow would bring. All he knew was that he wasn't ready to say goodbye to this peaceful life just yet. Elizabeth, the Demon Queen, glared at Lu Ping, her eyes still sharp despite her weakened state. What? She spat, eyeing Wankai, the mangled little mechanical dog on the floor. Is that your most powerful magical tool? Lu Ping, scratching his head awkwardly, offered a half-smile. You could say that, he replied, glancing at Wankai. Wankai was developed by me recently. Kind of a personal project. Elizabeth's gaze softened only slightly, her pride too wounded to acknowledge any hint of curiosity. I'm sorry for breaking your things, she muttered, the words foreign to her usually prideful lips. Lu Ping waved it off with a dismissive hand. It's okay, he said, crouching down to pick up the remains of Wankai. The memory card is still here. As for the body, he frowned as he examined the damage. Well, it can't be repaired. But I made a lot of preparations, so you don't need to worry. The Demon Queen blinked. Ah! Her voice was sharp with confusion. She couldn't comprehend why someone, especially a supposed hero, was being so nonchalant about the destruction of his most powerful tool. Lu Ping straightened up, shrugging. It's fun to have a companion, he explained with an easy smile, but Wankai can be a bit naughty sometimes, so I usually only activate one of them at home. Elizabeth scoffed, unable to wrap her mind around this ridiculous human. No way. There's no way you're serious. But before she could further express her disdain, something else caught her attention. Her nose wrinkled, her senses sharpening. What's that smell? Oh, Lu Ping said, perking up. I saw you faint earlier, so I made some food to warm you up. Elizabeth scowled, her pride flaring up again. Only the weak need to eat, she snapped. I've reached a transcendent state. I don't need these things. Unbothered by her defiance, Lu Ping lifted a bowl of steaming food towards her. These are all made from vegetables and grains I grew myself, he said with genuine pride. Completely natural. Please have a taste. Elizabeth, still scornful, eyed the bowl with suspicion, but couldn't resist the aroma. Her stomach, despite her transcendence, growled faintly. She took a reluctant bite, her sharp eyes never leaving him, ready to judge every morsel. Then it hit her. Ayya! Elizabeth gasped, her face contorting in a mix of shock and pain. Her throat burned like it had been set on fire. Asterisk ugh. 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 Asterisk, she struggled, barely able to form words as the heat spread through her mouth. It's spicy, so spicy. Lu Ping blinked, taken aback by her reaction. What did you add to the food? Elizabeth demanded, Her voice strained as she reached for anything to cool her burning tongue. "Oh," Leping replied, slightly sheepish. "I added a bit of chili according to my own taste. Does the demon queen not handle spicy food?" Elizabeth's prideful demeanor crumbled for a brief moment as she gasped for air, her regal composure shattered by a simple bowl of vegetables. Asterisk, curse you, hero, asterisk, she thought bitterly, trying to maintain her dignity despite the fiery sensation ravaging her senses. How could she have known that something so mundane could bring her to her knees? Lu Ping, watching her struggle with mild amusement, held out a glass of water. "Here," he said, offering it without a trace of mockery. "Sorry about the spice. It's how I like my food, but I didn't think it would be too much for you." Elizabeth snatched the glass from his hand, her pride still smarting from the embarrassment. She gulped down the water and, for a fleeting moment, found herself speechless. This so-called hero wasn't like any opponent she had ever faced. He wasn't trying to humiliate her. He wasn't even trying to win. He just wanted to share a meal. The realization made her pause, her earlier thoughts of vengeance simmering quietly under the surface. Lu Ping, unaware of the turmoil raging in her mind, simply smiled. "Well," he said, still casually, "at least now you know how I eat. Next time, I'll make something less spicy." Elizabeth, still trying to recover from the heat, couldn't decide whether to hate him more or grudgingly respect him for not exploiting her moment of weakness. Either way, she knew this human was unlike any hero she had ever encountered. But one thing was certain, she would never underestimate him again. Lu Ping bustled about in the small kitchen, his sleeves rolled up as the smell of congee filled the air. He stirred the pot with careful attention, trying to get the consistency just right. "Ah, there it is," he muttered to himself, satisfied with the aroma. "Century egg and lean pork congee. Perfect for clearing heat and reducing fire." Meanwhile, Elizabeth, the once feared demon queen, sat nearby with her arms crossed, her piercing gaze never leaving him. Her usual regal aura was still intact, though a hint of curiosity flickered in her eyes. She hadn't asked for this, none of it. And yet, here she was, watching the supposed hero prepare her lunch like it was the most natural thing in the world. "Elizabeth," Leping called, his tone light, almost playful. "The 3-star demon queen. You don't have to pretend. What is it that you really want?" Elizabeth narrowed her eyes, her voice sharp but guarded. "What are you thinking, hero? I just want us to figure out how a demon queen and a hero can coexist." She didn't trust him, not entirely, but there was something disarming about his casual demeanor, something that made her want to figure him out. Lu Ping chuckled softly, ladling the congee into a bowl. "Coexist, huh? You're the only one qualified to be the subject of my research," he said, placing the bowl in front of her. "Let me help you get stronger, and then you can defeat me." He grinned, his eyes twinkling with that same odd sincerity that had baffled her since their first encounter. Elizabeth scowled, though there was a faint, reluctant smile tugging at the corners of her mouth. "Teach delicious food to serve me," she scoffed, but her hand moved toward the bowl nonetheless. The aroma was too tempting to resist. Lu Ping nodded, watching her reaction closely. "Hee, if you want to become stronger, I can help with that too. I'm curious to see if you'll ever be able to defeat me." Elizabeth's pride flared. "Never mind. Forget it," she snapped, setting the spoon down with a clatter. But then she sighed, as if weighing her next words. "Listen, hero. I can agree with your conditions, but don't mistake this for fear. I'm doing this to pursue the pinnacle of strength." Her eyes, fierce and proud, locked onto his. "Furthermore, don't think I'll lower my head or be submissive while I live here. My dignity as the demon queen will never be violated. If you cross that line, even if it costs me everything, I'll destroy you." Lu Ping held up his hands in mock surrender, a soft smile playing on his lips. "Understood, understood. Then let's try to get along." The tension in the air softened as Elizabeth allowed herself to relax. "Just a little. If you want to do your so-called research, fine. But if there's anything delicious, I want it all." "Roger that." Lu Ping grinned, his playful tone returning as he saluted her, a gesture that elicited an exasperated sigh from Elizabeth. 1 year later, Lu Ping. Elizabeth's voice rang out from the other room, sharper than any sword. It's lunchtime. Why isn't it ready yet? Ah, yes. Coming right away. Lu Ping called, scrambling to finish the dish he had been working on. He couldn't help but smile to himself as he rushed to serve the Demon Queen. Life had changed in unexpected ways, and despite her fiery threats and lingering pride, Elizabeth had become part of his daily routine, something close to a companion. And while they still challenged each other, this odd coexistence was far more peaceful than either of them could have imagined. Lu Ping stared at the Demon Queen, Elizabeth, as she lounged lazily on the sofa, absently flipping through his old recordings. Her crimson eyes flickered with impatience, as though the scenes she watched were a tedious waste of time. He knew her pride, as the Demon Queen demanded nothing short of perfection, and she'd grown tired of his little distractions. So, I must seek her protection, Lu Ping thought to himself, a rueful smile tugging at the corner of his lips. He had expected their strange coexistence to be more dangerous, more eventful. But after a year of living together, the most thrilling moments revolved around meals and debates about food. Elizabeth sighed dramatically. I'm tired of watching these recordings of yours. Can't you get something new from your system? Or is this your way of slowly driving me mad? The system disappeared a long time ago, Lu Ping replied, putting the finishing touches on lunch. Come on, I prepared food. Elizabeth's eyes, still sharp as ever, brightened slightly. She always complained, but he knew food was the one thing that could calm her. Right away, she mumbled, as if reluctant to admit she was already looking forward to it. Just give me a moment. As Lu Ping set the table, Elizabeth eyed the chips he'd laid out earlier with suspicion. What kind of poison is in these chips you're feeding me? She muttered, a trace of annoyance in her voice. I feel like the more I eat, the lazier I become. Lu Ping grinned. He'd grown used to her sharp tongue, and he knew this was how she voiced her frustrations. Using the guise of delicious food to paralyze me with these slow-acting poisons? Trying to lead me into total depravity? Delusional. Elizabeth's voice rose dramatically, like she was delivering a speech on a battlefield. Those chips are just high in calories, Lu Ping replied calmly, a smile dancing on his face. Eating too many can make people lazy because they accumulate fat. Fat! Elizabeth arched an eyebrow, her voice full of disdain. All the fat that accumulates in my body is immediately converted into magic power. Your tricks won't work on me. She smirked triumphantly, as if she had just exposed a villain's plot. Lu Ping chuckled. Whatever you say, Your Majesty. Let's eat. As they began their meal, Elizabeth's mood lightened. Ah, today's lunch suits my taste perfectly, she said, her voice softening as she dug into the dish. I won't hold back. Lu Ping smiled, feeling the familiar warmth of their odd camaraderie. Eat slowly. If it's not enough, I can make more. It doesn't matter if you eat as much as you want. For a moment, the air was peaceful, almost companionable. Lu Ping thought to himself, it seems like I'll be living with the Demon Queen like this for a while. Suddenly, Elizabeth's voice cut through his thoughts. What do you mean by that? Her eyes narrowed in suspicion. You're still trying to trick me, aren't you? Lu Ping blinked in confusion, only to quickly change the subject. And for dessert, I'll go get it for you. Elizabeth's patience wore thin. That's enough, she snapped, standing up abruptly. Her aura flared for a brief moment, reminding him just how dangerous she truly was. Are you really treating me like a pig? In the past year, I've broken through my limits more than 10 times. I should have the ability to challenge you now. Let's have a decisive battle. Lu Ping, completely unbothered, smiled warmly. It's Elizabeth's favorite pudding, he said, holding up the dessert like a peace offering. The fire in Elizabeth's eyes dimmed instantly. Pudding, she repeated, her voice dropping in anticipation. The tension vanished as quickly as it had appeared. Great! Give it to me now! As Elizabeth eagerly reached for the dessert, Lu Ping couldn't help but chuckle inwardly. Fortunately, this Demon Queen isn't that difficult to deal with, he thought. Having the right food can calm her down easily. Evil's heart raced as her father's words echoed in her ears. Evil, wait for father to hold them back. You keep going towards the town. It'll be safe there. But she couldn't. She wouldn't leave him behind to face the dark guild's apostles alone. How could she abandon him, knowing the promise he had made to her mother? "No, I can't leave you behind and escape by myself," she cried, her voice trembling with defiance. Despite the fear swelling within her, she couldn't bring herself to take another step without him. Her father, determined and unwavering, glanced at her with the steely eyes of a warrior who knew his time might be running out. "I promised your mother that I would protect you no matter what," he said, gritting his teeth as the enemy closed in. "We must finish this quickly, Evil. Use your strongest move." Evil hesitated, her emotions clouding her judgment. She couldn't just leave him. But the fight was turning grim. Her father was weakening, and their enemies were relentless. "No matter what," she whispered to herself, her hands shaking. "I won't leave you, father." Suddenly, a guttural sound from the distance disrupted their resolve. Goo goo. Something stirred in the shadows, and the oppressive aura of the dark guild's apostles grew thicker. Her father's voice, though strained, carried an air of finality. "You can't handle them, Evil. Hurry, go." Tears welled in her eyes as she turned and ran, her heart breaking with every step. "Father," she screamed, but his voice was already fading. "Don't worry about me. Go quickly." In the shadows, another figure watched from the distance, an immortal frog, its unnatural eyes gleaming. It croaked, "Ribbit, big brother, the danger has been cleared. How should we deal with these two harmless humans?" "Do not harm harmless humans," came the cold reply. "I will take them back for the master to deal with." "Ribbit!" Evil awoke with a start, her mind disoriented and her heart pounding in her chest. Panic surged as she took in her strange surroundings. Where is this place? And where is Dad? Memories of the battle came rushing back. Her father had been seriously injured. He needed treatment, and fast, or he wouldn't survive. "Dad, you must hang in there." In the middle of her spiraling fear, her gaze caught a strange figure nearby, an oddly sturdy man who seemed too well-built to be real. Evil blinked, her fear momentarily replaced with confusion. Wow, Uncle must have spent a lot of time training to look like this. She heard someone mutter, as a warrior, physical fitness is fundamental. But it wasn't her father. Is this the warrior profession of another world? It's so amazing. Evil marveled, her anxiety blending with curiosity. But her reverie was broken by a harsh voice nearby. "Who told you to bring this riffraff back, you stupid dog?" The speaker, a gruff figure with a dangerous air, glared at a whimpering servant, and Evil's stomach sank. Where had they brought her? "Wow, so sturdy," someone muttered again, this time with more admiration than confusion. The conversation around her felt surreal. Evil glanced around, noticing another strange figure, Lu Ping, her unexpected savior, who was trying to mediate between the threatening atmosphere and her bewilderment. "Evil, you finally woke up," her father's weak voice reached her. Relief flooded through her. He was alive, but barely. "Dad is trying to please our saviors." The tension eased slightly as they were invited into Lu Ping's home. "It's rare to have guests, so let's go inside and talk," Lu Ping said, his voice surprisingly calm. "I'm really sorry. I don't have anything good to offer in this rural place. This is the barley tea I made myself, please." Evil's father gratefully accepted the drink, his exhaustion showing in every movement. "Dad, is this the miraculous potion you talked about? The one that would heal immediately after drinking?" Her father chuckled softly. "Ah, that's too exaggerated, Evil. I just fed you some cold well water before." The atmosphere remained tense, though less hostile. Lu Ping's strange aura seemed to radiate both kindness and something Evil couldn't quite place, an underlying power she couldn't fully understand. He was no ordinary man, and though his hospitality was appreciated, she sensed a deep mystery behind his every word and gesture. Evil's thoughts were interrupted by her father's voice again. "If it weren't for Mr. Lu Ping's help, I'm afraid I would have never seen you again, my daughter." Evil's heart ached, realizing how close she had come to losing him. Her eyes filled with gratitude as she looked at Lu Ping, though she couldn't shake the feeling that they were part of something much bigger than they realized. Lu Ping, always gracious, poured them more tea, though they declined politely, overwhelmed by his persistent generosity. Mr. Lu Ping is really a godly person, her father whispered to her. But I wonder what he really wants with us. Evil couldn't help but agree. She glanced toward the kitchen where the demon Queen Elizabeth had disappeared earlier, wondering what kind of strange arrangement they had found themselves in. One thing was certain. This strange chapter of their lives was far from over.